The sun hung low over the desert, casting long shadows over the crumbling ruins of Saqqara. Dr. Layla Hassan adjusted her wide-brimmed hat as she surveyed the excavation site. A specialist in ancient Egyptian artifacts with a keen interest in blending archaeology and nanotechnology, she had been drawn to this remote dig site by rumors of an untouched burial chamber. The dig had been slow-going for weeks, with only fragments of pottery and mundane artifacts to show for their efforts. But on this particular morning, the team unearthed something extraordinary. A sealed alabaster jar, tucked away in a niche that had somehow escaped looters for millennia. The artifact was pristine, its surface carved with intricate hieroglyphs depicting Ra, the sun god, bestowing blessings upon kneeling priests. Layla's pulse quickened as she carefully held the jar in her gloved hands. "This is no ordinary cosmetic container," she murmured. The hieroglyphs weren't just decorative, they seemed to be instructions. Back at the mobile lab set up near the site, Layla and her team delicately opened the jar in a sterile environment. Inside was a thick, black substance that shimmered faintly under the lights. "Coal," remarked one of the junior researchers. "The Egyptians used it as eyeliner, didn't they?" "Yes," Layla said, examining the substance under a high-powered microscope. "But this is different. Look at the way it refracts light." She ran a chemical analysis, and the results left her speechless. The sample was composed of elements far too advanced for its time, materials with nanoscale precision that shouldn't have been possible in 2500 BCE. The more she analyzed, the stranger it became. When a droplet of the substance accidentally landed on her glove, it began to move. The particles rearranged themselves, forming complex geometric patterns before becoming still. "Did anyone else see that?" Layla asked, her voice trembling. The room fell silent as the team watched a playback of the event on the lab's recording equipment. Later that evening, Layla sat alone, staring at the hieroglyphs from the jar. They described the substance as Ra's gift, a divine tool used to illuminate the spirit and strengthen the body. The priests of Ra were said to have applied it before performing rituals to speak with the gods. Could the legends have been rooted in something real? The idea was absurd, yet the evidence in front of her suggested otherwise. The next day, Layla decided to test the substance on human skin. With utmost caution, she applied a tiny speck to her wrist, observing the reaction. Warmth radiated from the spot as the particles seemed to absorb into her skin. Moments later, a surge of clarity washed over her. Colors appeared more vibrant, the sounds of the desert clearer. She felt an inexplicable burst of energy, as if she could run for miles without tiring. But the sensation was fleeting. Within minutes, the effects faded, leaving her with more questions than answers. Layla's discovery couldn't stay secret for long. As word of the ancient nanobots spread, her remote lab was inundated with requests from universities, corporations, and even government agencies. Everyone wanted to study Ra's gift. The cosmetics and beauty industries were particularly intrigued. If ancient Egyptians had harnessed this technology for human enhancement, what other secrets could be hidden in their rituals? Journalists began spinning tales of extraterrestrial involvement, suggesting that Ra's gift was not of this earth. Layla, however, was cautious. She knew the dangers of rushing into the commercialization of such a powerful substance. The nanobots clearly had limitations. Her brief experience had shown that their effects were temporary. More concerning was the fact that they seemed to respond to specific environmental triggers. What if misuse led to unintended consequences? Despite her reservations, Layla agreed to a collaboration with a biotech firm called Innovatech, which promised to provide resources for further research while respecting her team's autonomy. The funding allowed her to delve deeper into the properties of the nanobots, which revealed startling new insights. Using advanced imaging techniques, Layla discovered that the nanobots were activated by specific frequencies of light and sound. These frequencies matched those used in ancient Egyptian rituals. For centuries, scholars had dismissed these ceremonies as mere superstition, but Layla began to suspect that the chants, incense, and temple alignments were designed to interact with the nanobots. To test her theory, She replicated a ritual described in the hieroglyphs. Standing in a soundproof chamber, she played a recording of the chants and adjusted the lighting to mimic the flicker of oil lamps. When she applied a fresh sample of the cosmetic to her skin, the effects were immediate and overwhelming. Her vision blurred as shapes danced before her eyes, golden figures wearing intricate masks, their voices echoing in a language she didn't understand. Layla's heartbeat quickened, and she felt an overpowering sense of connection to something ancient and vast, as though the entire history of human civilization had compressed itself into a single moment. When the experience ended, Layla was left gasping for breath, her mind racing. The ritual had activated the nanobots in a way that unlocked more than just physical enhancement. It was as if they were accessing memories or knowledge encoded within the particles themselves. The implications of Layla's findings were staggering. If these nanobots were part of a larger system, then ancient Egyptian society may have been far more advanced than anyone had imagined. Theories abounded. Had they discovered this technology on their own, or was it given to them by some otherworldly force? Not everyone welcomed the discovery. Religious groups decried it as blasphemy, while skeptics dismissed it as a hoax. Meanwhile, Innovatech began pushing Layla to accelerate her research, hinting at lucrative commercial applications. Layla resisted, fearing the consequences of releasing such a technology into the world without fully understanding it. Her concerns were validated when a rival team announced that they had synthesized their own version of Ra's gift. The imitation lacked the precision of the original but promised similar effects. Overnight, the world seemed to be gripped by a new obsession with enhanced cosmetics. As the market for enhanced cosmetics exploded, Layla continued her research in secret, focusing on deciphering the hieroglyphs and scrolls recovered alongside the jar. She began to piece together a story that spanned centuries. The nanobots were not a product of divine intervention but of human ingenuity, developed by a lost sect of Egyptian priests who had used them to bridge the gap between the physical and spiritual realms. Yet something had gone wrong. The texts spoke of a great reckoning that had led to the sealing of the technology, a warning to future generations about the dangers of hubris. Layla couldn't shake the feeling that history was on the verge of repeating itself. By the end of the first act, Layla stands at a crossroads. She has uncovered a fragment of humanity's forgotten past, a relic of astonishing power that could transform the world. But as the allure of the nanobots spreads, she realizes that the true challenge lies not in understanding the technology but in determining how it should be used, or if it should be used at all. The sterile hum of Innovatech's high-tech lab was a far cry from the windswept sands of Saqqara, but Dr. Layla Hassan felt a familiar thrill as she leaned over a microscope. Before her was a breakthrough thousands of years in the making. A network of nanobots capable of interfacing with the human nervous system. Yet despite weeks of research, she felt as though she was only scratching the surface of the technology's potential. Layla's team, now equipped with state-of-the-art tools and a nearly unlimited budget, had made significant progress. They had mapped the structure of the nanobots and determined that each one functioned like a miniature machine, powered by environmental stimuli, light, sound, and even electromagnetic fields. However, their attempts to recreate the full effects of Ra's gift had been only partially successful. Without the precise rituals described in the ancient texts, the nanobots remained stubbornly dormant. One evening, as she pored over a recently translated papyrus, Layla stumbled upon an intriguing detail. The text described a harmony of the spheres required to awaken Ra's gift fully. It referred to sacred chants and gestures not as acts of devotion but as tools to manipulate the resonance of the divine. To the ancient Egyptians, sound wasn't just spiritual. It was functional. Layla assembled her team in a soundproof chamber to test the theory. Using the notes from the papyrus, they recreated the chants described in the hieroglyphs. The room filled with the low, rhythmic hum of ancient Egyptian melodies, played alongside carefully modulated light patterns. As Layla applied a new sample of the cosmetic to her wrist, the nanobots activated almost instantly. The room seemed to shimmer, and a faint golden light emanated from her skin. This time the effects were far more profound. She could see a latticework of energy patterns overlaying her surroundings, as if she were glimpsing an underlying structure to reality. Her mind filled with fragments of memories, images of towering temples, priests chanting in unison, and golden beams of light connecting the pyramids to the stars. The visions were vivid and coherent, unlike the chaotic flashes from her earlier experiments. When the effect subsided, she turned to her team, breathless. "It's not just enhancement," she said, her voice trembling. "These nanobots are unlocking something deeper. They're attuning us to something." As the experiments continued, the team began to notice patterns in the way the nanobots responded. Each activation revealed more fragments of information, as though the particles themselves contained a vast repository of data. Layla hypothesized that the nanobots weren't just tools, they were messengers, encoding knowledge within their structures. Deciphering this hidden language became the team's new priority. Using quantum algorithms, they managed to isolate what appeared to be sequences of instructions embedded in the nanobots. These sequences corresponded to the patterns described in the ancient rituals, revealing a complex interplay between sound, light, and motion. What astonished Layla the most was the precision of the instructions. The rituals weren't vague or symbolic. They were mathematical, using ratios and frequencies that aligned perfectly with modern understandings of resonance and harmonic oscillation. The Egyptians had essentially discovered the principles of quantum mechanics millennia before their time. One night, after a particularly grueling day in the lab, Layla decided to test the nanobots on herself again, this time using a complete ritual. She dimmed the lights, adjusted the frequencies, and chanted softly, following the rhythm described in the papyrus. As the nanobots activated, she was transported into a vivid vision. She stood in an ancient temple, surrounded by priests wearing golden masks. The air buzzed with energy as beams of light shot from crystal-tipped staffs, illuminating hieroglyph-covered walls. A figure stepped forward, an imposing man draped in shimmering robes. He raised his hands, and the room filled with a sound so pure it seemed to vibrate in her very soul. "You have awakened the gift," the figure said, his voice resonating with power. "But beware, its light can heal, and its fire can destroy." Layla awoke gasping, her heart pounding. The vision had felt so real, as if she had truly stepped into the past. Was it a memory encoded in the nanobots? Or something more? While Layla grappled with the implications of her discoveries, Innovatech grew impatient. The company's CEO, a shrewd and ambitious woman named Victoria Lin, began pressuring Layla to accelerate the project. Victoria envisioned a future where Ra's gift could be mass-produced and marketed as the ultimate performance-enhancing product. She argued that the potential benefits, curing diseases, enhancing intelligence, even extending life, outweighed the risks. Layla disagreed. The technology was far too volatile, and the rituals required to activate it were too complex for widespread use. More importantly, the visions she had experienced hinted at dangers the ancient Egyptians had understood but modern science could not yet grasp. But Victoria wasn't interested in caution. She authorized a team of engineers to bypass Layla's safeguards and create synthetic versions of the nanobots. The new models, stripped of their connection to the ancient rituals, were more efficient but less stable. Early tests showed promising results, but there were disturbing side effects. Hallucinations, erratic behavior, and even violent outbursts. Determined to find answers, Layla delved deeper into the papyri. She discovered a passage that sent chills down her spine. It described a catastrophic event known as the Day of Silence, when the priests of Ra had lost control of the gift. The nanobots, once a source of enlightenment, had turned on their creators, causing widespread chaos and destruction. To prevent further harm, the technology had been sealed away, hidden from the world. The text ended with a warning. Only those who walk in harmony may bear the light of Ra. To others, it brings only darkness. Layla realized that the nanobots weren't just a tool, they were a test. Their effects depended entirely on the user's intentions and emotional state. Without the discipline and balance cultivated through the rituals, the technology could easily spiral out of control. Despite the growing pressure from Innovatech, Layla decided to share her findings with a small group of trusted colleagues. Together, they began developing a modern framework for the ancient rituals, adapting the chants and gestures into a form that could be understood and practiced by contemporary users. The results were astonishing. Participants reported heightened awareness, improved memory, and a profound sense of connection to the world around them. The rituals seemed to awaken something within the human spirit, a potential that had lain dormant for millennia. But not everyone was receptive to the idea of blending ancient spirituality with cutting-edge technology. Critics dismissed the rituals as pseudoscience, while others accused Layla of playing God. The debate grew more heated as Innovatech prepared to launch its synthetic nanobot product, promising instant enhancement without the need for rituals. As the public became aware of Ra's gift, society began to splinter. Some embraced the ancient rituals, viewing them as a path to self-discovery and enlightenment. Others rejected them, preferring the quick fixes offered by modern technology. Tensions mounted as the world teetered on the brink of a new era. Layla found herself caught in the middle. She had dedicated her life to uncovering the secrets of the past, but now she wondered if humanity was ready for the knowledge she had unearthed. The nanobots had the power to transform the world, but at what cost? One thing was certain. The choices made in the coming weeks would determine the course of human history. The world was a patchwork of chaos and wonder. Innovatech's synthetic version of the ancient Egyptian nanobots had hit the market like wildfire, bypassing Layla Hassan's warnings. Branded as Neo-RA, the product promised superhuman abilities, enhanced strength, heightened senses, and the ability to process information at incredible speeds. Initial reports celebrated Neo-RA as humanity's next evolutionary step, but the cracks in this new utopia began to show almost immediately. People using Neo-RA began experiencing severe side effects. Reports of violent outbursts, hallucinations, and psychological breakdowns flooded the news. Cities became battlegrounds as Neo-RA enhanced individuals, their minds warped by unstable nanobots, lashed out unpredictably. The black market thrived, selling unregulated versions of the product that only amplified the chaos. For Layla, watching the world unravel was both heartbreaking and infuriating. She had tried to warn Innovatech, tried to slow the tide, but her voice had been drowned out by corporate greed and public frenzy. Now, she was determined to stop the catastrophe before it consumed everything. Layla locked herself in her lab, poring over ancient texts and digital models of the nanobots. The warnings in the hieroglyphs haunted her. Only those who walk in harmony may bear the light of RA. The ancients had understood the importance of balance between mind, body, and spirit, but modern humanity had ignored this wisdom, rushing headlong into chaos. Her research revealed a failsafe hidden within the original nanobots, a command designed to deactivate them entirely. The priests of RA had built this safeguard after the catastrophe known as the Day of Silence, ensuring that the technology could be neutralized if it ever fell into the wrong hands. But activating the failsafe was no simple task. The ritual required 3 key elements: the precise alignment of celestial bodies, a temple resonating with the frequencies of ancient chants, and the pure, unaltered version of Ra's gift. Without all 3, the failsafe would fail, and the nanobots would continue wreaking havoc. Layla quickly realized that time was running out. Innovatech's synthetic nanobots were mutating, spreading like a virus through physical contact. Entire communities were being consumed, their populations transformed into erratic, hyper-aggressive versions of themselves. Governments declared martial law, but their efforts were futile against an enemy they couldn't understand. Layla assembled a small team of trusted colleagues, scientists, historians, and even a linguist specializing in ancient Egyptian. Together, they traced the failsafe ritual to the Temple of Karnak, one of the largest and most well-preserved sites of ancient Egyptian worship. Its massive stone columns and intricate carvings had once been aligned with the stars, designed to amplify the very frequencies needed to activate the failsafe. But Karnak was in ruins, its alignment disrupted by centuries of neglect and looting. Restoring the temple's functionality would require an extraordinary effort, and Layla's team would have to do it under the watchful eyes of an increasingly desperate and fractured world. The journey to Karnak was fraught with danger. Layla and her team traveled under the cover of night, avoiding cities and towns where Neora's influence had taken root. The roads were littered with the wreckage of civilization, abandoned cars, looted stores, and the occasional ominous silence broken only by the distant sounds of conflict. When they finally reached the temple, they were awestruck by its grandeur. Even in its dilapidated state, Karnak radiated a sense of power and mystery. But there was no time for reverence. Layla quickly organized her team, assigning tasks to map the temple's structure, identify key resonant points, and prepare the ritual space. Using a combination of ancient blueprints and modern technology, they worked tirelessly to restore the temple's alignment. Drones hovered overhead, positioning reflective panels to simulate the angles of light described in the ancient texts. Sound engineers installed speakers calibrated to produce the exact frequencies needed to activate the failsafe. As the team worked, Layla kept one eye on the skies. The ancient texts specified that the ritual could only be performed during a rare celestial alignment, when the stars mirrored the configuration seen during the height of Egypt's Golden Age. That alignment was just days away, and failure was not an option. The night before the alignment, Layla sat alone among the towering columns of Karnak, staring at the unbroken jar of Ra's gift that had started it all. She thought about the visions she had seen, the priests who had walked these halls thousands of years ago, and the responsibility they had borne in safeguarding this knowledge. Now that responsibility was hers. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice. "Do you think it'll work?" It was Amir, the linguist, who had become her closest confidant over the past few weeks. "It has to," Layla said, her voice firm despite the doubt gnawing at her. "If we fail, there won't be anyone left to try again." The day of the alignment arrived, and the air buzzed with tension. The team took their positions as the stars began to shine in the evening sky. Layla stood at the center of the temple, the jar of Ra's gift in her hands. Around her, the others chanted in unison, their voices blending with the carefully calibrated frequencies emanating from the speakers. As the ritual progressed, the temple seemed to come alive. The columns glowed faintly, their carvings shimmering as if infused with liquid gold. The ground trembled and beams of light shot upward, piercing the night sky. Layla applied the cosmetic to her forehead, feeling the familiar warmth as the nanobots activated. This time, the visions were stronger than ever. She saw the day of silence as it had unfolded, priests desperately trying to contain the nanobots, their chants drowned out by chaos. She saw the creation of the failsafe, the anguish on the priests' faces as they sealed away the gift, knowing it might never be used again. Guided by the visions, Layla completed the ritual, reciting the final words etched into her memory. The light intensified, enveloping the temple in a blinding radiance. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone. When Layla opened her eyes, the silence was deafening. The nanobots were gone, not just from her body but from the world. The synthetic versions created by Innovatech had been deactivated as well, their corrupted programming erased by the failsafe. For the first time in weeks, the world began to breathe again. The chaos subsided, and the survivors emerged from their hiding places, dazed but alive. Governments and corporations scrambled to assess the damage, but the technology that had caused it was no more. Layla and her team returned to the excavation site at Saqqara, where it had all begun. The jar of Ra's gift, now empty, sat on a table in her lab. She felt a profound sense of loss, but also a deep gratitude. The ancients had entrusted her with their wisdom, and she had honored their legacy. In the months that followed, humanity began to rebuild. The scars of the Neo-RA crisis remained, but so did the lessons it had taught. Layla became a reluctant figurehead for a movement advocating for responsible innovation, blending the wisdom of the past with the possibilities of the future. One evening, as she walked among the ruins of Saqqara, she found herself wondering about the priests of RA. Had they foreseen this day? Had they known that their gift would one day save the world? The answers lay buried in the sands, waiting for another seeker to uncover them.